long, hot, violent, bloody summer all around the world, and it's about to kick off possibly in the next few hours, according to the Russian governor of Zaporozhye. They are currently evacuating a sizable part of their population, claiming that the Ukrainians are currently testing their defenses. They've been increasing their bombardments, mobilizing troops in and around the border. Lots of troop movements right now. It could start any hour. The long-anticipated counter-offensive that might be the kickoff point of World War III for reasons that we are going to discuss today. As you can see behind me here, Sergei Shoigu, the Russian defense minister, is inspecting what appears to be thousands, well, maybe hundreds is a better assessment of what's here anyways. I'm sure they don't have all their stuff in one spot, but at least in this one location, hundreds of brand new T-90 tanks. They can build 1,600 of these a year. And I believe when they started this war, they had something like 30,000 tanks of all shapes, sizes, dates, etc. So these people who are saying that the Russians are running out of weapons, it's completely untrue. Okay, the Wagner Group has been doing the majority of the fighting. And yes, we're going to talk about the Wagner freakout in just a minute. But they're talking that Putin might have a big surprise up his sleeve, especially after what happened with the Kremlin. We're talking about 900 warplanes, 150 bombers, just doing a massive blitzkrieg leveling of any part of Ukraine they decide to finally take and conquer. So we're going to see what happens. This is what the Russians have been doing behind the scenes. They've been preparing for this long-anticipated counteroffensive that the Ukrainians are only going to succeed at if they can really just go in and hit them hard and fast, blitzkrieg style, which is ironic that they'll be using Leopard 2 tanks, which makes this situation all the more concerning for reasons any historian should be aware. Now, Prigozhin, the Wagner guy. Let's talk about the freakout, okay? We're going to take you all around the map today. We got a lot of stuff to talk about here, guys. But let's talk about the Wagner freakout. Now, the head of the Wagner Corporation group, mercenaries, whatever you want to call them, private military contractors out of Russia, they use these guys because there's less legal liability, I guess, when you get mercenaries to do stuff. You can get away with a lot more. And so this guy right here that you're seeing talking, he had a freak out. He's accusing the Russian government of not providing enough weapons to his troops. He is currently in Bakhmut, the hottest of the hot in Ukraine right now, on the front lines, in the reddest of all places, on the front lines. Imagine that. One of the highest military commanders, not in the Russian military, because technically he's outside the military, but one of the highest in terms of the chain of command, in terms of power and influence within the society. The head of the Wagner organization is very, very high up there, okay? Now, this guy is on the front lines in Bakhmut, and he's trying to tell you that they are running out of weapons, that they don't have enough bullets. Why on earth would you have such a high-ranking person on the front lines? And I know people are going to say the Russians always put their commanders on the front lines. The king leads from the front, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to put a guy of this rank in harm's way like that. He is literally right on the fringes of the fight, okay? Not even in the safe part of Bakhmut, the part where they're loading the bodies, okay? And he's freaking out on camera. He's cursing out Sergei Shoigu and Gerasimov, which are like the two highest ranking guys in the Russian military. And Shoigu fires back today saying, what are you talking about? You got lots of ammo. So clearly there's some sort of animosity between the two. Perhaps Putin is keeping them at odds so that he can maintain control over people. He keeps various generals to scare other generals to make sure that one doesn't try to foment a coup or something like that. I don't know what it is, but ask yourself this question. Why would this guy, and this is why people think that this is a ruse, okay? That this so-called floundering of their military and this threaten to rout from Bakhmut is all contrived, and that Prigozhin is just a really good actor. It may well be the case, because if the situation was as dire as they say, I highly doubt this guy would be at the front lines for as long as he has been, okay? So I would just, I'm really open to hearing what your thoughts are on this. If you've been keeping pace with this whole thing, you might have some thoughts on what exactly is going on with this whole theatric. Now, part of me would think that maybe they were having too much of a good time grinding down the meat in Bakhmut. They've taken Bakhmut. The Russians have 95% of Bakhmut under their control. It's just a few city blocks that they have left. They've almost closed the cauldron, as it's called, and the pincers are, closing in. And so maybe they're concerned that the Ukrainians aren't going to keep throwing more meat into the grinder, and that this is a way to maybe bait the Ukrainians to throw more into the fight, knowing that they're just going to be annihilated by artillery, by Russian artillery. Now, supposedly, the Ukrainians have matched the Wagner in their artillery bombardments, and that's why there's been a bit of a stalemate here established. And the theory about that is that they're trying to keep the fight in Bakhmut going long enough until the counteroffensive starts. That's when they're probably going to fold in Bakhmut. But they don't want to do it until then because they want to maintain public and Western support and hope for the conflict. Okay, that's the prevailing theory. Anyways, you guys let me know what you think. What the hell do I know about anything? Yeah, so this is Bakhmut, right? This is what's going on there. You got 90% of the city is in red. It's all taken. They've been moving this way. They've been kind of closing around, and they've been closing the cauldron. And now they got a few more city blocks, and then what they do? Then they'd be bored. So right now they're screaming about the lack of ammunition. And a lot of people think it's just a ruse. Let's go to the map and see what is going on today. The Chechens have said, Kadyrov comes out and he says, okay, if you want to leave, I'll come there. Remember Kadyrov? So you got Kadyrov, you got the Chechen guy, you got the Wagner guy, you got Gerasimov, you got Shoigu, you got all these big generals, military men up top, and they're all kind of at odds. They're all kind of kept fighting over scraps almost. It's like Putin has a master Machiavellian plan to ensure that one guy doesn't establish too much power, if you know what I'm saying, or he can always use a couple other guys if some other guy tries to threaten a coup, if you know what I mean. I think there's some 4D chess going on there, but I could mistaken. What the hell do I know anyways? 10,000 drone pilots are getting ready for this Ukrainian counteroffensive. 10,000 drone pilots. Now, of course, we're talking about the DJI drones where they drop the grenade. But, I mean, you do that thousands and thousands of times. That's pretty effective on the battlefield. The Russians have been trying to master counter-drone technology. Now, I don't know much about how high these drones are flying. I'm presuming, based on some of the footage that I've seen, that it's not too far in the air, that you couldn't blow these things out of the sky with some number 4 bird shot. But what do I know? Okay, maybe you just got to start arming your soldiers with a shotgun as well, or just have a shotgun in every trench or something like that, and like a drone gun, basically, to take it out, or a bigger caliber shotgun that just had the right amount of spread and the right amount of range to blow these things out of the sky. That would be the way to do it. But they got 10,000 drones at the ready. Hopefully they can counter Russia's 900 active warplanes and 150 bombers that they can mobilize at any minute. We have a crackdown in Ukraine, okay? The media crackdown. You got to control the narrative before the big offensive starts. Now, this is the exact same thing that happened last summer. Gonzalo Lira, Coach Red Pill, if you guys have never seen that guy on YouTube, very controversial figure. Anyways, Gonzalo Lira disappeared. He's a Chilean journalist. And they took him last year. People thought that he got roughed up and that some people even thought he got killed at the time. And then he came back on the scene. They said that you can stay, we're going to put you on house arrest, or you got to stay in the country. You couldn't leave the country, that was it. And if you do try to leave the country, then yeah, you're going back to jail. So they got him again. And this is a sign that the narrative is, they're trying to control the narrative. I think this is very similar to what happened with Tucker Carlson. The United States knows, Rupert Murdoch knows people in the highest of high. You don't get that high. You don't get allowed to be in that influential position without, people in high places telling you what the limits are and the restrictions are and what you can say. And so Tucker Carlson may have been too anti-war for their liking, knowing that this counteroffensive was going to get very bloody this summer. And it's going to get a hell of bloody, guys, because you got to think about this. There's going to be so much military activity when this counteroffensive begins that something is going to go awry. There's going to be a missile that lands in another country. There's going to be a drone that gets shot down, an American drone. There's going to be some civilian airplane that gets offed, mistakenly thinking that it's a warplane. Shit's going to hit the fan. And that means that we're going to be very prone to having accidents happen. The Russians now have basically openly stated that they're at war with NATO and the United States. That they believe that they have proof, in fact, that the United States, and we're talking about Lavrov, we're talking about Peskov, there's another guy, Maria Zakharova, they all claim that this Kremlin attack was orchestrated in Washington. That's the final red line. There's no other red lines except that. Even if it was done by Russian defectors, by Russian partisans, as they're called, they would think that it was the Americans who were the ones who were funding that type of operation. Now, again, like I said in yesterday's video, just because something is American-inspired, American influence, doesn't mean it always comes from the top down. There's many degrees of separation between Joe Biden and covert ops guys who, maybe hire something out to some mercenaries or hitmen or whatever the case might be, or just some guy in a village somewhere and they pay him to go and fly this drone. I mean, there's so many ways that you can distance yourself and maintain that plausible deniability, that nice cushion to insulate you from any possible legal reprisals or tracing it directly back to Washington. But the Russians aren't stupid. They are saying that this is not a false flag. They're downplaying those accusations. So anyways, we know that we're in a state of war. And what I'm saying is it could start this weekend. It could probably be already started right now. In fact, the Wagner head says that it is already started. I think what he means by that is that they're starting to test for weaknesses, okay? Because they want to see where the easiest place to break through is going to be and start whatever sort of blitzkrieg maneuver with German Leopard tanks, World War II all over again, where the best place is going to be to start that out. Now, what else do we got going on here? Scorched earth in Bakhmut. What's going on in Bakhmut? These are some images of incendiary munitions being used in Bakhmut. And this looks like CGI. It looks like something out of a movie. It looks like a forest fire, some kind of sci-fi flick. But this is what it looks like in Bakhmut. I mean, Bakhmut is just scorched earth right now. I don't know how the hell people are surviving there. Apparently, there's a lot of underground tunnels. And apparently what the Ukrainians are using is the nuclear bunkers that were built there in the Soviet era to hide. And that's why it's been such a challenging fight. So you see, the Russians are fighting themselves. They're fighting their own missile defense. They're fighting their own weapons. And they're fighting their own fortifications that they laid down 20, 30 years ago. And everybody keeps saying they're stupid when, they're fighting themselves. It'd be like if we were fighting ourselves. All right, what else do we got going on here? New military chief of staff is inbound. He was actually appointed by Trump. We're going to talk about what that might mean for the future of the U.S. military in various conflicts. We have Rogozin, who insists that they must use nuclear weapons. He's talking about the Russians. He thinks that the only way to win is to utilize tactical nuclear weapons. He's calling them the great equalizer. I've always thought of nukes as being like the Second Amendment of the planet. That's why I can appreciate North Korea's desire to have nuclear weapons. I mean, it's like, it's gun control. Like nuclear arms control is really the guns control of the planet. Because it's the only thing that a little defenseless country, just like a little old lady, she can't fight off a guy who's 7 feet tall, 350 pounds, but she can have a gun, right? And if you're a little country and you can have a nuclear weapon, it's the perfect metaphor. It's the same analogy. So it's the great equalizer, as they say. Russia is in the North Sea with a bunch of ships, and that's not good because there's live fire exercises going on with NATO right now in that same region. They are concerned that the Russians might be sabotaging undersea cables, undersea critical infrastructure, offshore infrastructure, and that that's the next level of hybrid warfare that they're about to engage in. And of course, there's this whole coronation of the, what do they call it? The not the aristocracy, the monarchy, King Charles, whatever his face is. And people are going to say, you're disrespecting the king. I don't care. Okay, I quite frankly do not care. I have no allegiance to anybody but myself. If you don't like it, then I guess you can go and unsubscribe from the channel, all right? I'm sick and tired of having to kiss somebody's ass. I pay the taxes that I pay, and that's all I need to do, all right? Anyways, sorry about the rant, guys. Look, I still got